I worked for 40 years without missing a single day. I never raised my voice inside my home. Never broke a promise. Never looked at another woman. I gave Patricia everything. My 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. Every dollar I ever earned. Every quiet evening I could have spent somewhere else. I gave it all to her and to the family I believed we were building together. On the night of my 65th birthday, after the guests had gone and the cake sat half-eaten and the house went completely quiet, I reached into my coat pocket for my car keys. My fingers found something else. A card. Her handwriting. Her words. She wrote, "By the time you read this, I will already be gone. Robert, there is something you deserve to know 26 years ago. Daniel is not your biological son. 26 years. My son. The boy I coached in Little League. The boy I drove to college at 3 in the morning because he missed his flight. The boy I watched get married with tears running down my face. I thought those were the proudest tears of my life. 26 years, buried inside my own home, inside my own bed. And the only question I could ask, sitting alone at that kitchen table with my birthday candles burning down in front of me, was this: was any of it real? My name is Robert Harrison. People who know me call me Bob. I am 65 years old. I spent 40 years as a structural engineer in Chicago. I built bridges for a living, real ones, steel and concrete, things that are designed to hold weight. I want to tell you something about myself before I tell you this story. I was not a perfect husband. I worked too many hours. I was stubborn when I should have been flexible. I missed dinners I should have been home for. I know these things about myself, and I do not hide from them. But I was faithful. In 40 years of marriage, I was faithful. I am sitting here today because what happened to me on the night of my 65th birthday is something I have never spoken out loud to another human being. Not to my brother, not to my doctor, not to my pastor. Nobody. Because when the floor drops out from under 40 years of your life, there is no language ready for it. Nobody prepares you for this. Nobody tells you what to do when the woman you trusted completely, in your bed, at your table, raising your children, turns out to have been carrying a secret that makes a lie out of everything you thought was real. My name is Robert Harrison. I am 65 years old, and today, for the first time, I am going to tell you exactly what happened. I met Patricia in the spring of 1985. I was 25 years old, working my first real engineering job, and she was teaching second grade 3 blocks from my office. She had a way of laughing that filled any room she was in. I asked her to dinner twice before she said yes. On our 3rd date, I told my brother, "This is the one." I know exactly how that sounds now. But I want you to understand who I was at 25. I was a young man who believed in things completely. In hard work, in loyalty, in the idea that if you showed up every day and gave everything you had, the world would be fair with you. I believed that completely. That belief is where the story really starts. We married in September of 1986. 22 people at a small outdoor ceremony because neither of us wanted anything large. She wore a simple white dress with no veil. I wore a white shirt and forgot to iron it, and she laughed about it our entire wedding night. I remember thinking, I want to hear that laugh for the rest of my life. I thought I was the luckiest man in any room I walked into. I thought, completely, without reservation, that I understood the person standing beside me. I was wrong about that last part, but I didn't know it yet. And for a long time, for a genuinely long time, being wrong about it didn't cost me anything I could see. The early years were genuinely good. I want to be clear about that. I will not rewrite the past just to make this story easier to tell. We had real years. Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers. Family road trips where the car broke down in Indiana and we laughed about it for years after. A dog named Charlie who lived to be 14 and broke all our hearts when he went. The house was full of noise, full of life, full of the ordinary chaos that people call a family. For a long time, for many years, I believed that was enough. I believed that was everything. And then there was Daniel. Our son was born in 1999. I was 39 years old, and I am not embarrassed to tell you that I cried in that hospital room. I held him that first night and I thought, everything I have ever built means nothing compared to this. This right here is the real bridge. I coached his little league team for 4 years. I taught him to drive in an empty parking lot on a Sunday morning, both of us terrified and laughing. I helped him with homework I barely understood by the time he reached high school. I was there for every single thing that mattered. That is the one thing I will never stop knowing about myself. I was there, completely, totally, always there. The distance came gradually. It always does. First, it was longer hours at school, parent-teacher meetings, curriculum planning. Then Thursday evenings with a new friend named Maria. Then weekends that sometimes didn't include me. Her phone always face down on the counter. A pause before she answered where she'd been. The particular way she looked past me when she said everything was fine. I noticed. Of course I noticed. I am an engineer. I notice when structures are under stress. But I was 52 years old. Daniel was 13 and needed a stable home. The mortgage was real. The life we had built was real. And I was afraid, quietly, deeply afraid, that if I asked the question I was already carrying in my chest, everything I had built would come down. So I went back to work. I put in longer hours. And I told myself, every marriage has quiet years. I want to stop here and say something honest. Something I have been sitting with for 8 months. The choice to stay quiet was mine. Patricia made terrible choices. But the decision to swallow the questions, year after year, to walk past what my instincts were telling me and call it patience, call it strength, call it being a good husband. That was my decision. And it cost me 13 years of the truth. I tell you this not to take her side. I tell you this because if you are a man sitting somewhere right now with a question you have been afraid to ask, you need to hear this part too. The question doesn't destroy the marriage. The lie destroys the marriage. The lie was already there, growing in the dark. Me asking the question would have been the truth arriving on time instead of 40 years late. Remember that. In 1998, 1 year before Daniel was born, Patricia had been in an affair with a man named Gary, a colleague from her school district. The affair lasted 14 months. When she discovered she was pregnant, she was not certain whose child it was. She chose not to tell me. She chose to let me hold my son in that hospital room. Let me coach his little league team. Let me cry at his wedding. She let all of it happen, knowing what she knew. The affair with Gary ended. He moved away. She included this in the card as though it should comfort me. She said she had carried the guilt for 26 years, that it had broken her, that she was leaving because she could no longer look at my face. She said she was sorry. I read that word, sorry, in my wife's handwriting, with my birthday candles burning in front of me, and I had to set the card down very carefully because my hands were shaking in a way they have never shaken before or since. I am a man who builds structures designed to hold weight. I have never, in 65 years, felt weight like that. 6 weeks before my 65th birthday, everything looked completely normal. Patricia was planning the party the way she had always planned everything, methodically, thoroughly, with attention to every detail. She ordered a custom cake. She chose the restaurant. She handled the invitations. I sat in my kitchen on Saturday mornings reading the newspaper while she organized it all, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Gratitude. Simple, uncomplicated gratitude for the life around me. I remember thinking, whatever the quiet years cost us, whatever distance grew between us, this is still something worth celebrating. 40 years. We made it to 40 years. I believed that. 6 weeks before everything, I believed that completely. Daniel drove over that Saturday morning to drop off his birthday gift early. He was going to be travelling for work that week. I remember standing in my kitchen with my arm around my son's shoulders, looking at him and thinking, this is everything. Whatever the hard years cost, this man right here is worth every single bit of it. I remember thinking that. Standing in my kitchen. 6 weeks before everything, the party was everything she had promised. The house was full. My brother James came from Detroit. 2 of my oldest friends from the firm were there. Daniel's toast made me embarrassed by how emotional it made me. He talked about what I had taught him, the trips we took, the man he said I helped him become. I looked at my son standing there with a champagne glass, and I thought, whatever I got wrong in this life, I got this right. I got this one absolutely right. Patricia sat beside me the entire evening. She refilled my glass. She touched my arm when she walked past. She was, to anyone watching, the perfect picture of a wife celebrating her husband. She was also saying goodbye to me. The card was already in my coat pocket. She had already decided. And I sat at that table for 3 hours, laughing and eating cake, with the letter that would end my life already waiting in the dark. My fingers found the envelope, and I thought it was something I had missed during the party. I saw my name in Patricia's handwriting, and I thought she had written me something sweet. She used to do that when we were younger. Leave notes in pockets, small pieces of paper with something she wanted to say. I opened it standing in the hallway. The first line read, "By the time you read this, I will already be gone." I stopped. I read that line again. I looked up from the card. The house was completely still around me. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, a car passing outside, my own breathing. I looked back at the card, and I read the rest of it. And then I walked to the kitchen, sat down at the table very carefully, the way you sit down when your legs are not completely sure they will hold you. And I did not move for the next 6 hours. She had planned this. That was the thing that took the longest to absorb. This was not an impulse, not a breakdown. She had planned this the way I planned bridge construction, in stages, over time, methodically. She had moved things out gradually over weeks, months maybe. The closet told the whole story, organised absences. Nothing rushed, nothing dramatic. She had removed herself from our home the way a contractor removes load-bearing elements carefully, so the structure doesn't notice until it's too late. Her car was gone from the driveway. Her phone went directly to voicemail. And again. And again. The house I had lived in for 29 years, the house I had paid for and built up and repaired with my own hands, was completely, utterly silent. And in the kitchen, on the table, her birthday card sat with its single sentence that had made a stranger of 40 years of my life. Daniel came over the next morning because I called him at 7 a.m. and told him I needed to see him. I couldn't find words on the phone. He drove over in 20 minutes. I will always remember that. 20 minutes. My son drove across Chicago in 20 minutes because his father called. I let him in. I sat him down. I put the card on the table between us and I slid it across without saying a word. I watched my son's face while he read it. I watched the confusion, the frown, the slow, terrible understanding moving through him like something physical. I watched his jaw tighten. I watched him read it twice, 3 times. I watched him look up at me. He said just one word. He said, "Dad." And I said, "I know." We sat at that table together for 2 hours. We didn't find answers. We didn't reach any conclusions. We just sat in the kitchen where he had grown up, in the grey morning light, with the card between us. And I want you to hear this part clearly. Whatever that card tried to say about biology and genetics, whatever the truth of his DNA turns out to be, that morning at that kitchen table, Daniel was my son. He is my son. He will always be my son. That part she did not have the power to take from me. She could take 40 years of a marriage. She could not take 26 years of being his father. Those belonged to me. After Daniel went home, I sat alone in my house for the second night in a row. I want to tell you honestly what that felt like. Not the dramatic version, the real one. The real version was quiet. Very, very quiet. I sat at my kitchen table and I looked at 40 years of photographs on my refrigerator, and I tried to sort them, in my mind, into what was real and what was performance. This birthday, real or not? This vacation, real or not? This ordinary Tuesday evening, real or not? And I found that I could not do it. Because even if the foundation was built on something false, the life built on top of it was real. The meals, the arguments, the reconciliations, the ordinary days, the growth, those happened. They shaped the man sitting at this table, and no birthday card, no absence, no 26-year-old secret could undo the fact that those years, for better and for worse, were mine. I had lived them. They belonged to me. Morning came. I had not slept. My back hurt from the kitchen chair. The birthday cake on the counter had gone stale. I made coffee, the same way I have made coffee every morning for 40 years. And I stood at the kitchen window, and I watched the sun come up, and I felt something I had not expected. Not anger. I had moved through anger somewhere in the middle of the night. Not grief. Grief would come later, in waves, for a long time. What I felt was clarity. For the first time in many years, there was nothing left to be afraid of. The thing I had been afraid of, the question I had spent 13 years carefully not asking, had answered itself. And I was still standing. That was more than I had expected. I was 65 years old, alone in my kitchen, and I was still standing. And for the first time in this entire story, that simple fact felt like mine. My name is Robert Harrison. I am 65 years old. The divorce was filed 6 months ago. Daniel and I have dinner every Sunday. We have not missed a single Sunday since the morning I showed him that card. He calls me Dad. He will always call me Dad. That is the one thing in this entire story that is not complicated. I still live in the same house. I still make coffee the same way every morning. I still watch the sun rise from the kitchen window. Some mornings it is beautiful. Some mornings it is simply light. Both are enough. I am not going to tell you I am healed. I am going to tell you I am honest. For the first time in a very long time, I am completely, simply, honestly myself. If you are a man sitting somewhere right now with a question you have been too afraid to ask, something that has been living in your chest for years, quiet and heavy, I want you to know, you are not too old. You are not too late. The life you deserved has not expired. It is waiting for the moment you finally decide you would rather know than not know. That moment for me was my 65th birthday. I hope yours comes earlier. Yeah, the regret after 50, Kika honey. Life lessons? Late reflections? My name is Robert Harrison. I am 65 years old. The divorce was filed 6 months ago. Daniel and I have dinner every Sunday. We have not missed a single Sunday since the morning I showed him that card. He calls me Dad. He will always call me Dad. That is the one thing in this entire story that is not complicated. I still live in the same house. I still make coffee the same way every morning. I still watch the sun rise from the kitchen window. Some mornings it is beautiful. Some mornings it is simply light. Both are enough. I am not going to tell you I am healed. I am going to tell you I am honest. For the first time in a very long time, I am completely, simply, honestly myself. If you are a man sitting somewhere right now with a question you have been too afraid to ask, something that has been living in your chest for years, quiet and heavy, I want you to know, you are not too old. You are not too late. The life you deserved has not expired. It is waiting for the moment you finally decide you would rather know than not know. That moment for me was my 65th birthday. I hope yours comes earlier. Yeah, the regret after 50 kicker, honey. Life lessons, late reflections,